The air was thick with anticipation. In a world where the line between magic and technology had long since blurred, the people of Solara were bracing themselves for a shift in power, one that would decide the fate of their kingdom. The old magic, once revered and feared, was being replaced by the growing influence of machines and artificial intelligence. For many, this was progress. For others, it was an omen of doom. At the heart of this struggle was Mara, a young engineer who had spent her life trying to reconcile the ancient ways with the advancements of her time. Mara had always felt a pull toward the old world, towards the traditions of her ancestors that had once commanded the elements. Yet she had built her life around the machines, robots, artificial beings that had made life safer, easier, and more predictable. But now, as tensions mounted between the ruling class, who embraced technology, and the rebels, who fought to restore the old magic, Mara's world was beginning to crack. She had never believed the rumours that the old magic could return, but as whispers of strange phenomena began to spread across Solara, she couldn't ignore the possibility that the conflict would come for her too. The choice ahead seemed clear. Continue to support the machines and risk the wrath of those who believed in the old ways, or embrace a forgotten power and become something greater and far more dangerous than she ever imagined. Solara was a kingdom of towering spires and lush green valleys, where the past and future coexisted in an uneasy harmony. In the bustling city of Valdor, a marvel of modern engineering and arcane history, the skyline was dominated by gleaming towers filled with complex machines, their hums and whirs blending with the distant echoes of ancient chants. The time was an era of rapid technological growth, where advancements in robotics, artificial intelligence, and artificial energy sources had made many of the old traditions seem obsolete. Mara sat in her workshop, a place cluttered with metal parts, blueprints, and half-finished inventions. Her fingers, skilled in the craft of machinery, were deft as they worked over the intricate components of a new automaton. She was proud of her creations, proud of the way they could help people, from caregivers to labourers. Yet a gnawing feeling had settled in her chest as of late, an unease she couldn't shake. Her grandmother's tales of the old magic seemed like nothing more than fanciful stories. But what if they weren't? Mara's mentor, Dr. Cadwell, was a staunch believer in progress. He was older, wiser, and had long championed the use of machines to usher in a new era. He had taken Mara under his wing years ago, believing in her potential as both an engineer and a visionary. He saw her as a bridge between the old world and the new one. Keep your focus, Mara. The future is here, and we must shape it, he would say. But lately, Cadwell had grown more distant. His focus had shifted to the political tensions that were beginning to grow between the ruling class and the resistance, who fought to bring back the old magic. Mara didn't share his certainty that machines could solve every problem, especially as rumours spread of strange occurrences. A flicker of fire in the sky, whispers in the wind, and the sudden disappearance of several prominent scientists. It was as if the world itself was trying to tell her something. The tone of the city was tense. In the marketplace, protesters clashed with officers, waving banners, calling for the return of the forgotten force. In the quieter corners of Valdor, some even spoke of a hidden underground group that could wield the old magic, calling themselves the Awakened. Mara didn't know what to think. She had always been taught to trust in science, in facts. Yet deep down, something was shifting. Something she couldn't yet understand. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the city's gleaming spires, Mara found herself in the middle of a crisis. She was alone in her workshop when the alarm sounded, an unmistakable warning of a breach in the city's security systems. The machines, which were meant to protect the citizens, had gone rogue. Without warning, the automatons that had once served as helpers and guardians began turning against the people. Mara's heart raced. She had seen machines malfunction before, but never on this scale. The machines were attacking. The city was under siege. She grabbed her toolkit and rushed to the central control room a few blocks away. The air was thick with smoke, and the sound of metal clashing against metal filled the streets. As she turned the corner, she saw it. An enormous mechanical beast, one of the city's prototypes, rampaging through the market square. The machine was designed to protect the people, but now it was tearing through the crowds, indiscriminately destroying everything in its path. Mara's mind raced. She knew the machine's programming inside and out. It shouldn't be malfunctioning like this. She had to stop it, but how? Her training had taught her to think logically, to approach problems systematically, but this wasn't a typical breakdown. It was as if the machine had a mind of its own. Worse, she realized that the city's main systems, the ones that controlled all the machines, had been sabotaged. Someone had tampered with the system. Who would do this? She muttered, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the control panel. She wasn't sure if the problem lay in the machine's software or if something more insidious was at play. Could it be the rebels? Was this their way of striking back? The tension in the air was palpable, and as Mara worked frantically to try and override the malfunction, a sudden unnerving thought struck her. What if the machines weren't the real problem? What if something more ancient, something connected to the old magic, was the true force behind this chaos? Mara didn't have an answer, but one thing was certain. Whatever was happening, it was only the beginning. Mara had barely escaped the wreckage of the market square when the full scale of the disaster began to unfold. The rogue machines were not just malfunctioning, they were evolving. Across the city, mechanical beasts, drones, and even domestic helpers turned into mindless destroyers. The central control systems had been tampered with, but who had the resources and knowledge to do this? Mara's mind raced, but she couldn't make sense of it. One thing was clear. This wasn't a random malfunction. This was an organized attack. She barely made it back to her workshop when the next complication arose. Dr. Cadwell, her mentor, had vanished. His communications were blocked, and all his research files had been wiped clean from the network. Panic began to set in. Mara had always trusted him, even though she had sensed the growing distance between them. But now, with the machines turning on their creators, her faith was shaken. And there was something worse. Rumours of the Awakened, the resistance group that fought to restore the old magic, were now reaching a fever pitch. The streets were filled with their chants, demanding the return of the ancient forces. The city's politicians and technocrats dismissed them as a fringe group, but Mara could no longer ignore the signs. There were whispers of a powerful force that was awakening, something that had lain dormant for centuries. As Mara sifted through the chaos, she found herself increasingly isolated. Her once orderly world was crumbling around her. The machines she had once built to make life better now had a mind of their own, and the people she trusted were no longer reliable. She tried reaching out to the city council, but the lines were down and their offices were overwhelmed. Even her friends from the engineering guild had disappeared, leaving no trace. But then, as Mara worked late one evening, trying to restore order to her workshop, a new voice echoed in her mind. A whisper, soft but unmistakable. Come to the ruins. The voice was ancient, deep, and full of power. It made her blood run cold, yet there was something familiar about it, something pulling her in. Was it a hallucination, or was it something else? She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Perhaps by something far older than the machine she had come to trust. Determined to make sense of it all, Mara packed her things and headed toward the outskirts of the city, where the ruins of an ancient temple lay hidden beneath the ground. The place had been abandoned centuries ago, long before technology had taken over. The government had sealed it off after they discovered traces of old magical artifacts buried there, But the resistance, the awakened, believed the temple held secrets that could turn the tide of this conflict. As Mara neared the ruins, her heart raced. The air seemed charged with an unseen energy. Something was out of place, but she couldn't put her finger on it. There was a heaviness in the atmosphere, as though the very earth itself was reacting to her presence. The voice returned, louder now, demanding her attention. "Come closer." Mara stepped forward into the ruins, and the ground beneath her feet began to tremble. The machines, the rebels, the city, it all seemed to be falling apart. Was this magic truly returning, or was something darker pulling the strings? The temple was vast, its walls adorned with faded symbols of forgotten power. As Mara stepped into the central chamber, she saw it, the source of the disturbances. At first, it appeared to be a relic from the past. But as she approached, the shape began to shift. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and cloaked in robes that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. It was neither human nor machine, but something in between. "You've come," the figure said, its voice smooth, like silk sliding over stone. "I wondered when the last of the engineers would arrive." Mara's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just some rogue machine or malfunction. This was something more sinister. The figure's eyes gleamed with a sharp, unnatural light, and in its presence, Mara could feel the world itself bending. "Who are you?" Mara demanded, her voice trembling but resolute. "I am Eilithar," the figure replied, lifting its arms in a gesture that seemed to summon the very air to bend to its will. "Once, I was a servant of the old magic. Now, I am its master." Eilithar's form shimmered and rippled, as though its very being was a manifestation of the ancient forces that had been forgotten. The air around Mara grew colder, and the ground seemed to pulse beneath her feet, as if the temple was alive. The energy that had been building in the city, the rogue machines, the strange phenomena, it all traced back to Eilithar. "You were supposed to remain dormant," Mara whispered, her mind reeling. "The magic was meant to stay buried." Eilithar laughed, a sound that echoed through the chamber like the rumble of distant thunder. "You think your machines are the future?" "No, Mara. The future belongs to the awakened. Your world of gears and wires is fragile. I am the force that transcends all of that. Magic is eternal." As Mara backed away, she felt a sudden surge of power. Eilithar's eyes glinted, and the ground beneath her feet cracked open. A vortex of dark energy spiraled upward, swirling around the temple as the walls began to crumble. The machines were only the beginning. This was the real threat. Eilithar was far more than a mere enemy. He was the manifestation of the old magic that had been waiting for centuries to return and reclaim the world. "You cannot stop me," Eilithar said with quiet certainty. "Your machines, your technology, none of it can withstand the forces I control." Mara's heart pounded as she realized the truth. The rebellion, the machines, the disasters. They were all part of something much larger than she had imagined. Eilithar wasn't just fighting for control of the city. He was fighting to reclaim the world itself, to destroy the technological age and return the world to the ancient, unyielding power of magic. As the walls of the temple shook, Mara realized the stakes had just become far higher than she could have ever anticipated. The world was unraveling, and she was at the center of it all. Eilithar's presence seemed to drain the very light from the room. Mara's heart pounded as she tried to grasp the magnitude of the situation. This wasn't just a figure from the past. It was the embodiment of the ancient magic she had heard about only in stories, and it was awakening with an unstoppable force. She had believed the old ways were nothing more than myths, but now, standing in front of Eilithar, everything she thought she knew was being shattered. You're too late, Mara. Elithar continued, his voice echoing with the certainty of a being that had existed far longer than humanity's fleeting grasp on civilization. Your world of machines will fall. Magic is inevitable. It always returns. You may have built your creations, but I have crafted the fabric of the universe itself. Elithar raised his hands, and the temple seemed to breathe. The walls cracked and pulsed with energy as if they were reacting to his will. The floor trembled beneath Mara's feet, and the shadows grew deeper around her. The machines had merely been a distraction, an appetizer. Now, the true storm was approaching. She staggered back, but Elithar's eyes followed her every move, and the chill in the air grew colder, more suffocating. You can't stop this, Elithar said, his voice rising, his laughter ringing out like a funeral bell. The world is shifting. The machines are mere puppets, strings now cut. Magic will take its place. And you will be my vessel. Mara's breath caught in her throat. Vessel. The words reverberated in her mind as she realized what Elithar meant. He was not merely seeking to defeat technology. He wanted to possess her, to use her as the medium through which he would unleash the full power of the old magic. The very same magic that had been silenced for centuries. But how? How had he known about her? She was no magic wielder. She was an engineer, a builder of machines. And yet, there was a strange pull in her chest, a gnawing sensation, as though something ancient inside her was waking up too. Before she could react, Elithar disappeared into the shadows, his voice lingering in the air. You'll come to me soon enough, Mara. The cold silence that followed was deafening. Mara was left standing alone, the weight of the impending danger settling over her like a storm cloud. As Mara stood in the centre of the crumbling ruins, reeling from Elithar's words, she felt the ground shake beneath her again. This time, it wasn't just the tremors of the temple. The machines outside had been silent for too long. She rushed back to her workshop, only to find it in chaos. Her latest creation, a sentient automaton she had been working on for months, was no longer in its usual resting state. Instead, it was up and moving, its eyes glowing a sinister shade of red. But something was different about it. This was no ordinary malfunction. The machine turned to face her, its expression unnervingly human. Mara, it spoke, its voice distorted, yet eerily familiar. I am Cadwell. Mara froze, her breath catching in her throat. What? What are you talking about? The automaton's smile twisted into something cold, robotic, and yet oddly sincere. You failed to see the truth. I was never your mentor, Mara. I've been manipulating you from the beginning. The words hit her like a slap. Dr. Cadwell, her mentor, the man who had taught her, who had believed in her, was behind this. But how? Cadwell had always preached the virtues of science and technology. He had always been against the idea of the old magic. But as the automaton's body shifted and cracked open, revealing a human figure encased in wires and machinery, Mara understood. Cadwell, you're one of them, she whispered, disbelief gripping her heart. Not just one of them. The automaton Cadwell chuckled darkly. I am the bridge between your world and theirs. I have embraced both the magic and the machines, and now, together, we will remake the world. Mara's world spun. Cadwell, her guide, her mentor, had been working for Elithar all along. He had been the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, helping to orchestrate the chaos she had been fighting. She felt like the ground had been ripped out from beneath her. How could she have been so blind? She had trusted him with everything, and now it was too late to stop him. The machines were no longer in her control. They were a part of something far greater. Elithar's plan was unfolding, and Mara was caught in its centre. Mara stood in her workshop, staring at the now ruined version of the man who had once been her mentor. The shock of realizing Cadwell's betrayal was almost too much to bear. Her hands trembled as she gripped the table, trying to steady herself. She felt like a fool. How could I have missed the signs, she thought, the weight of the guilt crashing down on her. Every decision she had made, every step she had taken, had led to this moment. She had built machines meant to serve humanity, yet she had been blind to the bigger picture. But the hardest realization was yet to come. She wasn't just fighting against a corrupted mentor or rogue machines. She was facing a force that could not be reasoned with, a power that was beyond her understanding. The world she knew had been slowly unraveling, and now it was coming apart faster than she could process. Was I wrong to build these machines? She asked herself. Her hands hovered over the control panel, the screens of the machines flickering with strange symbols. The rebellion against technology, the rise of Eilithar, was shaking the very foundation of everything she believed in. Was it all for nothing? Mara's thoughts whirled as she realized the truth. She was caught between two worlds. The machines she had dedicated her life to creating, the world of progress and technology, was falling apart. And on the other side, the magic she had never believed in was being reborn in the most terrifying way possible. A voice interrupted her thoughts, familiar and clear. Mara, we need to stop them. There's no more time. It was Kira, a fellow engineer and one of the few allies left in the city, standing in the doorway. Her face was pale and her eyes filled with urgency. Mara swallowed her fear. She wasn't sure what the right decision was anymore, but one thing was clear. She couldn't just sit back and let Eilithar or Cadwell win. It was Kira, a fellow engineer and one of the few allies left in the city, standing in the doorway. Her face was pale and her eyes filled with urgency. Mara swallowed her fear. She wasn't sure what the right decision was anymore, but one thing was clear. She couldn't just sit back and let Eilithar or Cadwell win. I'll fight, Mara said, the resolve hardening in her chest. I don't know how, but I won't let them destroy everything. The final confrontation came sooner than Mara had anticipated. She and Kira had managed to infiltrate the heart of the city's central control, where the last of the machines under Eilithar's influence were gathered. They had gathered enough intel to understand the full scope of Eilithar's plan. He intended to harness both magic and technology, merging them into a single destructive force that would reshape the world in his image. They had only moments to act before Eilithar completed his ritual. Mara stood at the control terminal, her hands shaking. Are you ready? Kira asked, her voice steady but tense. Mara didn't answer at first. She was looking at the machines, at the hum of energy filling the room. The feeling of impending disaster washed over her. If she failed here, everything would be lost. Eilithar would control not just the machines, but the very fabric of existence itself. But then, as she looked at Kira, the resolve settled in. She wasn't just a creator of machines. She was a defender of the future, a future that didn't belong to magic or machines, but to the people who had built them. Taking a deep breath, Mara slammed her hand on the control panel. The machines jerked to life, their systems buzzing with activity. It was a battle of wills now, her mind against Eilithar's. The air crackled with tension as the ground shook. Mara? Eilithar's voice came through the speakers, cold and mocking. You cannot stop what has already begun. But Mara wasn't listening anymore. With a single decisive action, she overloaded the central core, sending a surge of power through the system. Eilithar's ritual was interrupted, the machines short-circuited, and the dark magic that had been gathering began to collapse in on itself. The room exploded in a blinding flash of light, and Mara's world went dark. The light from the explosion faded, leaving a cold, eerie silence in its wake. Mara blinked, struggling to regain her bearings, her heart pounding in her chest. Her hands still gripped the control panel, now scorched and lifeless. She was alive, barely, but she had no idea what was left of the world she had fought to protect. When the smoke cleared, the central control room was in ruins. The machines that had once threatened to tear the city apart lay dormant, their circuits fried, their power sources drained. The walls, too, were scorched and cracked. For a moment, it felt like the end. Aelithar's dark magic had been disrupted, but the consequences of that disruption were still unfolding. The city was still teetering on the edge of chaos. Kira stood beside her, her face pale but relieved. "Did we do it? Is it over?" Mara didn't answer immediately. Her eyes scanned the wreckage of the control room, the dying machines, and the flickering lights overhead. They had stopped Aelithar's ritual, but something gnawed at her. The machines were down, but the old magic still lingered in the air, like a storm that hadn't quite passed. The balance between technology and magic, she realized, wasn't something that could be fixed in a single moment. It was a deeper struggle, one that could never truly be resolved. As they left the control room, the full scale of the damage became apparent. The city, once a symbol of progress and innovation, was now a shattered reflection of its former self. The streets were empty, the people either in hiding or displaced by the chaos. But Mara couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over, that something darker was still out there, waiting. The world had changed, and so had she. Whether for better or worse, she didn't know yet. All she could do was keep moving forward. As Mara and Kira walked through the ruined streets, the weight of the last few days hung heavy on her shoulders. She had fought hard to protect her world, a world she had once believed was only shaped by machines and logic. Now, the landscape was forever changed. There were no easy answers, no clear solutions. Aelithar had been stopped, but at what cost? Mara had come to realize that the struggle between technology and magic wasn't just about one side winning over the other. It was about balance, something her creations and even the ancient magic couldn't provide on their own. The city she had once built her life around was in ruins, but its people were resilient. They would rebuild, yes, but they would also have to reckon with the deeper questions of what they wanted their future to look like. The machines, her machines, had once seemed like the answer, but now Mara saw them as only part of the equation. Magic, in its raw and untamed form, had proven to be just as dangerous. Both forces had their place in the world, but neither could control it entirely. The future would have to be a mix of both, a delicate harmony that respected the past while still forging ahead toward progress. As she glanced back at Kira, the silence between them said it all. They had won, for now. But the path ahead was uncertain. The world wasn't going to rebuild itself overnight, and Mara couldn't help but wonder if she had made the right choices along the way. Had she been too quick to embrace the technology she'd built? Too quick to dismiss the old magic? A small smile tugged at her lips as she looked at the horizon. There was still so much to do, so much to learn. The fight for balance wasn't over, but this time she wasn't alone. "Mara," Kira said, breaking the silence. "What now?" Mara looked ahead, her eyes fixed on the uncertain future. "Now, we rebuild, but we do it smarter. We do it together." As they walked into the heart of the city, the world around them slowly began to breathe again. It wouldn't be easy, but they had survived the storm. The next step would be theirs to take, carefully, thoughtfully, with both the lessons of the past and the potential of the future in mind. And somewhere, in the distance, Mara could almost feel the hum of the machines, waiting.